Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed partners, Grupo Terromar is proud to present the future of Monte Palma, Costa de los Leones, a bold new horizon rising along the Caribbean shoreline. At its center stands the Palacio del Mar, with its adjoining convention center and casino. This is more than a hotel. It is the engine of Costa de los Leones, a stage for international conferences by day and a beacon of entertainment and prestige by night. Supporting this flagship are two complementary towers, the Vista del Sol Resort, offering leisure and recreation for families, and the Torre Leones, built for the global executive, combining efficiency and modern comfort. Binding them together is the Plaza de los Leones, an oceanfront esplanade that echoes our traditions while unlocking the true potential of this coastline. What was once underused land is now being transformed into a gathering place for the world. The promise is clear. Projected annual revenues exceeding $500 million, a figure that positions Monte Palma as the Caribbean's premier destination for international tourism and investment. This achievement is possible through vision, partnership, and the continuing leadership of Minister Rodrigo Castaño, whose steadfast support has ensured the resettlement of families and the streamlining of development for projects of national importance, allowing resources to be directed where they matter most, into growth and prosperity. We invite you to join us in celebrating the grand opening in August 1990, a project that embodies the promise of Monte Palma, where history, hospitality, and prosperity converge on the coast.
And welcome back to Monte Palma. For this week's episode, we're just going to move a little ways up the coastline here, just to this new section right down here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of terraforming here. I need this to be beachfront property for our Seaside resort that we're going to be building this episode. And of course, every seaside resort needs a sandy beach, which is, I'm going to draw that in right now. When I started this episode, I was under the mistaken assumption that I was going to be able to build the resort and the town adjacent to it all in one episode. That was definitely a little over ambitious. So for this episode, we're just going to be focusing on the resort. Ideally, I would have wanted to build the town first and then build the resort, but I just underestimated exactly how much time this was going to take. So I'm starting with the resort. I am going to lay out a simple road layout here just to get an idea of where the town is going to be. Now, for buildings for the resort, we don't really have anything in the way of hotels. We have a very small selection. So we got to get a little creative here with what the assets we have and figure out what we could use to make luxury hotels and convention centers and that sort of stuff. This building, what is this? The sushi? Is this the sushi office? I can't remember which one this is. This is actually the actual signature building here, and we're just orienting it so it looks correct. For the convention center, I have to remember what these buildings are. This one's from the Eastern European side, is it? I forget. We're going to use this for our convention hotel, but we can see here the backside. It's not suitable for beachfront. No architect is going to do that. So we're going to splice a whole bunch of the static versions together here to create our own building. Something that makes sense for the coastline. I'm also going to be placing a few other buildings around at the same time. I'll be coming back to these later in the episode. Now, just looking for all the assets, trying to find suitable assets to use. I really like this building. The only issue is I can't recolor it. So this red brick coloring, not really suitable for what I want here. Although the shape of the building was, I felt correct for a convention center. I also like the way it's spliced together here, the way the stairs came down here. This would have worked really nicely, but unfortunately, the color was just not going to work. So we're going to go with this. I think this is a signature building, a European assets. It's a hotel, not a very interesting hotel really, but we can use it as an addition. Also, for our convention center, we're going to be using the Activity Plaza, which is going to be our convention center / casino. I can imagine what the views from inside this would look like overlooking the ocean here. I think it would be really quite a spectacular view. We're just going to spend some time here lining it up. I want the long, skinny section in the back here to line up with the, hard to see it right here, but yeah, right here. We want this to kind of line up as straight as possible to indicate the buildings are essentially one building. For the family hotel, we're going to be using the figure building. I'm going to be using the signature building plus the aesthetic version of it to make it into something a little more unique, change the heights a little bit. And this is where our Seaside Plaza is going to go down here. Now the static buildings here are floating in the air, so we're going to need a foundation. We're going to use these giant cubes here to make our foundations for these structures. Since this one is an actual signature building, it already flattens out the terrain, so I just have to figure out a way to disguise the messy intersection with the terrain, because building things on slopes and hillsides is still problematic here. So we have to figure out a clever little solution. I wanted to disguise the backside. It is a loading dock, and I don't really want that. So we're just going to insert a little storefront. We're going to insert a storefront here at the backside just to hide that. And we got some small terrain issues, which we're just going to hide with like water features and plants. Now I know some people don't like the fact that I'm using so many plants to hide some of the jankiness of the buildings. You got to remember, we don't have custom assets, and there are real limitations to what we can do with the game, and you can't correct all the limitations, so you have to figure out clever ways of disguising them sometimes. I'm going to be using Harbor Master Jay's stairs here for stairs down to the beachfront. Now for our plaza, I'm going to have some issues here. The terrain, like we can see, I'm trying to use a net lane here to draw a fence, and the terrain is causing all sorts of issues. Terrain can be difficult to work with. It's not completely flat a lot of the times. There is a mod here I'm going to be using to fix some of these issues. Right now I'm using some prop pillars here just to like build out an edge. But you can see the jagginess there, and so I can't get the terrain perfectly flat. We'll come back to this in a sec. I'll show you how I'm going to fix this. Also, I need to disguise some of this. It's a little too abrupt down to the waterfront. We're just going to build it out with some terrain elevation, some rocks, and some shrubs and trees and stuff, just to blend the buildings to the shoreline a little better, or at least attempt to do this. And I want a couple of different colors for rocks here, just to give it a bit of variation. I'm also going to draw in a little path here so people can get from the hotel down to the beach. Now, you can't really see it here because they're invisible, but there's on Sully's Discord, you can find a mod that is basically referred to as a terrain leveler. It's essentially these, you can see these squares here. There's flat surfaces. They come 3x3, 4x4, 5x5, and they're invisible, but they act like a building, and they completely flatten out the terrain. So if you need a perfectly flat area, these will help. Now, they're not perfect, as we'll see here. There's a bit of a hill between the two, and there's not really much I could do I can't make a 90-degree angle here, which is what I really would want. But there's just no way with how these things work that you're going to be able to do it. But I can make this much, much flatter than it was. You can see all the jagginess along the pillar is gone. And I can make the transition as neat as possible. But there still is a little bit of a hill here, and I don't want that. And there's nothing I can do about it. I have to come up with a creative solution to hide that. And we're going to turn it into a planter and put a bunch of plants in there. Plants are your friend. I have to work with what I have, right? And this works just fine. Once it's all planted in, we never know that there is actually an issue with the terrain here. And because of the way net lanes work, I can't use a net lane here to draw this out. I can't even really use the line tool to just draw it out and move it. It's just too clunky. So I have to put down these bench sections one at a time here and draw out some tiled surfaces here for the plaza. Now that it's completely flat, this looks a lot better. It's not completely flat. There are a couple of janky little sections in here where the train does some odd things. So we have to just look the other way sometimes. And the reason I'm saying this is not to just give you excuses. It's just to, if you're building things yourself, don't be so hard on yourself if you can't make it perfect. As you can see here, the net lanes don't work perfectly around this edge here. They want to disappear, so we have to keep that in mind as well. We're going to frame the plaza here with some palm trees. And I'm going to be using the surface blocks here to create a park. This is the park surface block, and we're putting down some gathering areas. This looks really good. Unfortunately, because I have so many different things stacked on top of each other here, they tend to want to disappear on me. And that's happened several, you can see right now, some of them have disappeared. So it's just a matter of slightly moving things to get them to pop back. But the reason why they're disappearing is I have surfaces and other things all stacked on top of each other here, and I think for the game engine it's just too much, so it tends to want to de-res certain sections. I thought a signature Seaside restaurant here would be fitting. We're going to be using this one. It doesn't quite fit into the block. It's a little large, so we're just going to trim off some of the excess, redraw the hedge again to fit the actual lot we have. And a little bit of staining works very well just to blend or unify all the surfaces. So it looks, they don't look pristine or perfect. They look like they've been here for a while. This light stain here, this dusty one, is perfect for the dark ceramic here. And I'm going to be using this signature European row home here to create a custom block of apartment buildings right on the waterfront. Now, I didn't mention these in obviously the report to shareholders there at the beginning, didn't really mention these, but these would be part of the development. They would have been market housing or something along those lines to be bought. I really wanted to create some rooftop gardens overlooking the ocean here, but the roof on these things has a bit of an angle on them, so that made it a bit difficult. Up here on the roof of the casino convention center, we have this little divot, which is just empty and is not doing anything. So I thought it might be interesting if we could turn this into a rooftop restaurant. It's a little unrealistic. Any architect would have, if there was a rooftop restaurant here, it obviously would have an ocean view. This one doesn't, but we'll make do. And once again, we want to disguise these big gray cubes here a little bit so they're not standing out so much. So I'm just going to do a little landscaping around the sides of these just to hide it a little bit so we don't have to see it as much. right here is going to be our main entrance into the casino convention center. So we're just going to mark it with some advertisements on the entrance. Now, this isn't necessarily part of the resort. It's just another building. We'll come back to that. And also, I'm going to be putting in a few buildings in the background here, which are also not necessarily part of the resort. It felt a little like barren here, just sitting all by itself. So I'm just putting some extra buildings in as a kind of a backdrop. We'll come back to this in the next episode when we start building out the town that is associated with this resort. For this particular hotel, I want to create a seaside or beachside access. We're going to draw in the path here. I'm using the path here just so I can use the terrain leveling aspect of it, just to draw in a nice slope. And once again, we are going to create a custom pool here with the path. And the retaining wall to create a lip. And we're going to use one of the water surfaces here, this light blue one. I think it looks looks just like a pool, so I think that is what we're going to go with. Here I'm just creating some garden areas or planters around the patio section of the hotel here, just to make it look a little more lush and inviting to come out here to sit. And a net lane edge here just to finish it off so it looks a little more deliberate. For the front of the hotel, I want to create some water features, and I'm going to be using one of the pool assets from the residential houses, and we're just going to stack these in and try to create an interesting little pattern with them. Sometimes trying to get these palm trees dead center in the planters can be a bit of a hit or miss kind of experience. And just looking for a more suitable concrete pattern here for our surface. And finish it off with a few park benches. Okay, back to this house on the shoreline here. I'm not sure if this is a private residence or like a private resort of some sort. I haven't really come to any decisions about that. We have to do a few alterations with terrain around it just to make it feel like it belongs here a little better. Try to hide the square shape of it, which is, you can see I'm having a bit of an issue right down here. There's a real hard edge there. I have to work with it a little bit, try to hide it so it's not so obvious. I wanted a unique structure here out on the peninsula, so we're going to use the French water tower, but I'm going to sink it all the way into the ground just so I have the little top of it sticking out here, which I think creates a rather interesting looking building. I don't know what it's for exactly, but it makes for a very nice landmark here. And none of the props that come with this asset are really all that suitable, so I'm going to get rid of pretty much all of it. I'm not sure why I made this so irregular, but I just wanted to have a kind of a unique look to it. Honestly, though, I probably could have maybe straightened this out a little bit. Maybe it's a bit too much here. And I'm going to be using some trees in here just to break up the edge a bit so it's not so perfect. So we have a bit more of a irregular shaped yard for this asset. And it also ties it into the cliffside here. and hides the hard edge of the sand as well. Replace this fountain with something a little more impressive. And a net lane edge just to finish this off. It looks a lot more polished when we do this. I'm going to spend a bit of time landscaping the yard. As I said earlier, I'm going to be adding a few extra buildings here just to serve as a backdrop. Everything along the waterfront is going to be fairly built up and fairly new, but the farther away we get from the waterfront, there's going to be a change in the buildings and architecture, obviously, but everything here is going to be fairly new and modern. And I'm going to be splicing a few of these buildings together to try to create some unique looking buildings. Who knows when the asset editor is going to arrive, and in order to keep this creatively interesting for myself, I'm going to have to rely on this more and more moving forward, just to come up with interesting solutions or new combination. Once again, we're going to use the water features we have to try to create some new ones or something a little different and unique. I don't know if this one's the most successful, but it's now part of the city. I said it in the last episode, and it's even more true now. We're going to start having some fairly major traffic issues in this location. We're in a bit of a cul-de-sac for all of this, so the traffic is being funneled in through a couple of roads, and there's quite a few backups. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to tackle this quite yet, but I am going to have to figure out some sort of solution to this. Now, out of everything I've made in this episode, this building here is the one I'm least certain about, and I'm not sure if I like it, and it might get replaced. I like the idea of what I'm doing here, but I don't think this, in this particular location, or exactly the way I went about it here, I'm not sure if it's a bit clunky. We have under the underneath side here, we have like garage doors and back entrances, which are not suitable for the oceanfront side. So I'm going to take static versions of these. They're all static versions, and sink them down lower and kind of place them like so. It works. I just don't think it works for this location, or if this is quite suitable, but I do the effect. And I think I'm definitely going to try to be using this again in some other location. I just don't know if it's suitable for here. Big issue with this one is the roadside. There's no storefronts. So I thought I'd splice in some actual functional commercial buildings down here. But the whole idea here is to experiment with the assets we have and see what new things we can build with them. Because for the moment, that's all we've got. Okay, just to finish it off here, I'm just going to put in a few trees. This will all be replaced with the actual town in the next episode, so it's all very temporary. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around to the very end. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.